Good morning. It is dark, but it is not meeting morning. Just got our, I got contacted for a custom PCB design, and I've worked with this guy before, and I ordered the design, and it came in just yesterday. So it has some of the features that I had been working on implementing on the next version of Signum. So it's pretty cool to see them, you know, on the board. Things like complete solder mask on the top, better silk screening on the bottom, like documentation, silk screening on the bottom. No, it's what is it? It's self-documenting. It's self-documenting. The only thing that's self-documenting is Emacs. So it's cool. It looks great. So there's some prep work I'm going to do on the boards before I ship them out. But yeah, it's got five new keyboards, custom fitted and everything. Custom designed, custom fitted. Pretty cool. Oh, I gotta remember to send. Oh, I gotta test it first. I gotta make sure. I haven't done any testing on it yet, but everything looks really good. Once the testing's done, I'll send over the Gerbers. Slow cooker. So yeah, that's kind of funny. That is actually pretty funny. So the internet enabled crock pot is something of a meme, because it's just so ridiculous. It's not quite as memey as my internet enabled shovel. That just makes you angry though, so no one wants to talk about that. But it reminded me. We got a nice hunk of meat, but it's shoulder, so it kind of needs to chill out a little bit, to heat up, to slow cook a while, to loosen up. So we're slow cooking, and I'm reminded of the history of this slow cooker. It's a slow cooker that was, wow, I didn't even think about that. It's a slow cooker that we got on, or as a wedding gift. And we've been married 10 years. So that sucker's 10 years old. We didn't give it really excessive use. It was more one of those things, because I was really into making whole chickens at that point and just seasoning them different ways. And then the cost of whole chicken got high, and the cost of parted out chicken got low. I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me, but whatever. So I started making chicken thighs and stuff like that. But this slow cooker was... It had some minor use. I'd use it every once in a while, and then one day it stopped working. Rather, everything seemed to work on it, but it wouldn't heat up. So this was a long time ago. I didn't know much about electronics at that point. Let's see, maybe 2 years here. So 12, 13, maybe 2014, maybe around there. And I didn't know anything about electronics, except that I knew that I wanted to figure out how to electronics. Electronics was one of those things that escaped my ability to learn, and was particularly frustrating to me. It took me literally years to even understand most of electricity, most of what I was doing, or what needed to be understood. Everything else I learned really fast. This was one of those things. Electrical engineering was one of those things that took forever for me to learn. But that is actually one of those things that I think might have benefited from a structured learning environment, like a class, an actual class. Because normally I just bounce around, but bouncing around was probably not the right way to learn electrical engineering. The Make Electronics book was probably the one that tipped the scale for me and got me to actually understanding some of what I was doing. So I highly recommend that book. I donated it somewhere, so someone else can hopefully learn. But at this point, I didn't know anything, and the crock pot would not heat, and I didn't know anything about anything. And my choices were to throw it away or to try and fix it. I chose to try and fix it. So, crock pot's not heating. That means the heating element's not working. And I know now that there's just these, it's a metallic heating element that wraps around the thing. It's wrapped in separate, like, fireproof paper and all kinds of stuff like that. It's designed, not paper, but it's designed to, absorb all that heat and transfer it into the crock pot. Or to create the heat, rather. So I'm, like, looking at this, and I'm literally just prodding it with my multimeter. And I have no idea what I'm doing. Truly. I really don't know what I expected. But I had really no idea. Like, I expected to plug a thing in and then have it have 0 reading. Like, something that it looked like it should have a reading, or one next to it has a reading and this one doesn't. Some kind of thing like that. I could not figure it out. So I'm like, all right, something's wrong here. So I try to connect, man, it's a little hazy because it was, it's scary. But I just started prodding stuff, and I'm like, I'm not even knowing what I'm looking for, but I'm going to keep trying. So I wound up plugging it in, and it kept prodding for stuff, and I'm like, I'm not really getting anything. And then, I think this was either before, no, it had to have been before. Yeah. So, I'm like, well, clearly my multimeter is not set to the right thing, so I set it to amps. And you probably know what happens when you set multimeters to amps and start poking around things that are plugged in. Somehow I did not blow the fuse on my multimeter, but I did create a shower of sparks when I shorted some 120 volt. Just like, don't, I don't know, I can laugh now, but it was just stupid. Because it wouldn't have been the first time I electrocuted myself across 120 volts. That might have been part of what got me to avoid electronics for a while. Yeah, I'll never forget that feeling. Anyways, I literally, oh man, oh, it's just like XKCD. Wow, that's really revealing. So I took the 2 probes, and I'm like, what if I check here and here? Like, I wanted to see if I could see the mains voltage, and I had it set for amps. So I'm like, doop, 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 and just like, pop! And like bits flying through the air. I see like streamers of, red hot stuff flying off. And, thank God none of that touched me. But I was like, okay, that was bad, and that was not good, so I won't touch that part again. And then the only thing I can think of is after that experience, I somehow thought, I wonder if it does that every time. Like, because I remember I did it, and I was like, whoa, that was kind of dangerous and bad. What if I keep going? And I did it the second time. And after the second time, I was... Good Lord. Jesus, thank you for saving me. Wow. So anyways, in shorting out various portions of the board, I unknowingly had damaged one of the pieces, one of the devices on it. One of the components. So, good heavens. So, I took the, I looked at the heating unit, and I think I looked something up or something, and I realized that heat is generated from resistance using electricity. So I was like, oh wait, that means I should get resistance on the heating element, because it was just like a band that wrapped around and 2 wires that came off of it. So I measured for resistance, because that was like one of the few things I actually knew how to do, and I got infinite resistance. So I was like, oh, well, I guess there might be something wrong here. And I take it apart and unwrap it, and sure enough, the heating element is this like thin metallic strip, and it's wrapped around a thing to kind of keep it taut, and one part was broken. So I moved it and rewrapped it and kind of bent it over itself. You couldn't solder it, obviously, because it gets very hot. But once I bent it over itself and kind of held everything in place and wrapped it back up, I could measure resistance across it. So I put it back together, plugged it in, pressed the buttons to turn it on, and on it was. I was like, yeah, it's on. While I was in there, I took pictures of the circuit board, like close-up pictures of the components, so I could get component items, component IDs, names, whatever, thingies. So it turned on. I was like, yeah. And then I went to turn it off, and I realized it wasn't turning off. So it was just, you plug it in, it turns on, and you unplug it, and it turns off. So I was like, I'll call that a win. I wasn't electrocuted, and I didn't have any burning metal from some slight electrical welding fly onto my body. So we'll call it a win. So for the longest time, that was how it operated. And hilariously enough, if I were to get a one of those smart plugs, I could make it a smart crock pot. Because it was I had essentially converted it to a dumb crock pot. And this is relevant because I later, when I learned more about electronic components, I was like, oh, wait a minute, why does a crock pot not, like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would it do that? So I looked through my pictures, and I realized that there were some components on there, and then I had the IDs on them. So now I'm smart enough to actually look up the IDs of these devices and see what they do. And I don't know what the hell these things are. It's like reading a Linux man page when you're fresh off of Windows. You have no idea what you're even reading. Like, this is informative, and I don't understand it at all. So reading one of the spec sheets or the tech sheets for any of these components is just like completely Greek to me. I'm like, okay, great. But what I did know was this is a part, and I can order this part. So I wound up ordering one of the parts, and I took the crock pot apart again and soldered in, replaced the part, and no difference. So I said, all right, well, the next component is like $3. I guess I'll go ahead and try it. So I did, and I swapped that part in, and hey presto, it worked. So now the crock pot's back at 100%. It only cost slight bodily danger and and a couple of probes that were destroyed by arc welding, I guess. I don't know. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty bad. I might have had to set it to unfused. That's the only way I could possibly have done that. Ugh. Wow, genius. So I've come a long way, I guess. But I'm using the crock pot today, right? And I plug it in, and we want to do like 36 hours on this meat, because it's tough meat. So I set it, and I remember vaguely that it does 24 hours and then it shuts itself off. I was like, why would it shut itself off? Like, it's some kind of safety feature, probably. Just so you don't leave it and like go on vacation or something. I don't know. But suffice to say, this morning it beeped aggressively that it was turning itself off, and I went back out there and turned it back on. And I was like, man, I wish this thing was dumber. And then I realized, I remembered all this from when the crock pot was dumber, and when it had, when it was just you plug it in, it turns on, you plug it, you unplug it, it turns off. And the idea of of making the crock pot dumber and then making it smarter just like giving it a controllable intelligence. That thing's hardwired to shut off after a certain period of time, and I actually understand that's kind of interesting. It has some reliable timing, obviously. I don't even know that it has a crystal. I probably have the pictures still from inside it. I could see if it has a crystal in it, or if it's just like off the internal microcontroller timer or crystal. Definitely doesn't have a clock in it, a proper clock. But you take something that was a gift, and well, that was the other thing about fixing it that was super annoying, was that I wanted to find parts for it, and you literally could not find parts for it because they stopped making the bloody thing. And sure enough, this was like probably the first item I ever realized was in this level of planned obsolescence. I realized that when it first broke, I was like, oh, well, you know, I'll just buy a replacement main board for it, or a replacement heating element, or whatever I suspect is the problem. And I couldn't find one. And I could barely find the model that I had bought, or that we got. I think it was from Target. So, like, Target had references. It's like Hamilton Beach or something like that, whatever that nonsense product line is. But the product was, like, they had other crock pots, but all of them were just slightly different. And you could tell from the button configuration that the internals were probably exactly the same. But if you just couldn't find parts for it. And you couldn't buy an older version of it because they made new versions that were non-backwards compatible, so that when it broke, you couldn't just get parts from a new one or something. And I'm like, this is intentional. Is this like, or rather, is this intentional? At that point, I didn't know. But it made me mad that one thing on this was broken, and I was basically going to have to throw out the entire unit. And that was what really kind of goaded me into to poking around in there to see what I can see, even though I had absolutely no idea what it was doing. I mean, I'm glad I did. It was dangerous and kind of dumb, but I did it, and I learned a lot from it, and it became an ongoing project, and it still works today, obviously, with all its stupid logic. But it works, and it has a timer on it. You can set it for like high for X amount of hours, and then it'll shut off and go to low, and then it'll go to warm mode or something, you know. You can program it slightly, but to have it the internet-enabled crock pot. Oh, man. Please set up the Wi-Fi on your crock pot. So that's a fun story, I guess. I don't know, a warning and an opportunity, I guess. I want to spark your imagination, but I also don't want you to electrocute yourself. It doesn't feel good. But I mean, if you blow up a multimeter or two, then, you know, that's just life. That happens sometimes. Burns heal. Scars look cool. It's all good. It's a little trip down memory lane. I really have come a long way since then, and it really hasn't been that many years. Huh. Oh, there is one circuit board left of the original Signum series. I reduced the price for kind of a closeout on the last bit. If you've listened to the end of this, which I highly doubt, I keep this secret information for you. The last one is up at a reduced price, so I want to close that out and then figure out what shop I'm going to use to get the next version up. Today's Friday. It's a pretty good day.